Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to our third edition of our Voices of Asian American Faith Freedom. My name is Charles Watson. I'm Director of Education, and I am so honored to have my friend Tahil Sharma with me today. Thank you, Tahil.
Pleasure being here, Charles. Glad to be here.
Yes. So Tahil is the regional coordinator for North America at the United Religious Initiative, and he's also an Hindu-Sikh activist. And I'm happy to call him friend, and looking forward to this conversation with you today. So Tahil, the last 2 weeks have been great, and we want to bring you in today to not only celebrate AAPI Heritage Month, but also have dialogue and conversation about tough issues and getting voices out there, as we've talked about before. We see this as an educational opportunity, a learning opportunity, and so we're honored to have you today. And so I'll start you off with the question that I start all, I guess, off with. Tell us a little about your family story in America, and how did you come to your faith tradition?
Absolutely. So I came to my faith traditions from my parents, but I was born into a dual religious household. So my father's family is Hindu and my mother's family is Sikh. Both my parents came to the United States in the late 80s to, search for opportunities and to be able to start their family. I actually have to credit my grandfather for telling them, like, hey, FYI, I need a grandchild. And they said, okay. And that's how I kind of came to exist. Um, but
Kudos
over
to
time,
granddad.
being at home with my family, living in Los Angeles, which is hyper diverse, not only did I have like a yearning to be able to learn more about my traditions, I was raised in an environment where I had an appreciative knowledge and willingness to learn about others from their traditions as well. Los Angeles, being one of the most religiously diverse places in the world, gave me an opportunity to get exposure to all of the world's religions and atheists and agnostics at a very young age. And over time, that actually gave me inspiration to dig deeper into my traditions and look at it from a pluralist and a justice point of view.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Well, first, kudos to granddad. Thanks for pushing for it. But that's amazing to hear the interfaith relationship and how that actually took shape and molded you, and also something I don't think we've talked about in the other discussions. Growing up in California, growing up in LA, the diversity that was there. It's the total opposite of where I grew up in Middle Georgia. We probably the furthest we could be apart and still be in the same country, not only by miles, but also by just your demographics in there. So that's a beautiful story and how it is. So how do you think your identity has informed your theology, and how has your identity been perceived by others? We grew up in a diverse place, but we've been all over the country and other places too. So how do you think it has shaped your theology, and also your identity and the perceived identity of others?
I'm going to take a bit of a page out of Kathy's book from her interview and say that, theology is a very difficult word to use when you come from an Eastern context, because the idea of, being able to center your convictions in the context of the world is kind of hard, considering there's so many overlapping things that make you the person that you are. So I guess in using that terminology, my theology has come from the idea that service always comes first. The Sikh mindset of being able to serve others at all times, at all costs, means that we are in a condition to make sure that the world is uplifted, and that we actually look for chardi kala, or a relentless optimism, in the approach that we take to serving the world. It's a reminder of my ability to recognize that I was born at an intersection. There's so many different crossroads and so many different identities that make me the unique person that I am. And if I don't learn to center service and justice as a part of that, I'm actually not fulfilling the entire person that I am. And more importantly, I think, to the context of justice work, both Hinduism and Sikhism have taught me that, this whole universe is a part of a singular creation, a singular creator. And that if we don't acknowledge the condition of others, we're actually diminishing our own condition. So the best way that I find myself in prayer is when I'm out in the public square fighting for the rights of others.
Oh wow! Oh wow! And service to self, service to others, excuse me, is something big. That's a beautiful tradition. I mean, that's why for me it's just so enlightening to engage other faiths that's different than mine, other people, other the creation. As you brought it up, you know, I've always had the saying: if I believe there's a creator, then that means that all of us are made by that creator, and I can learn more about the creator through creation. So why would I not try to learn and seek other people and seek out other people different than myself? It only helps me. Have you found that to be the same for you? Just, you know, building yourself up through others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about the overlap of different, issues and calamities that are taking place, whether we're looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, whether we're looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, whether we're looking at vaccinations in the COVID-19 pandemic, or whether we're looking at climate change and global warming, if I don't see myself in everything that I'm going to serve, I'm not going to have the willingness to serve it. And that may sound a little selfish to some folks, but in reality, it's a part of what creation is. If we don't see the ebb and flow or the synchronicity of how everything comes together, then of course we're not going to be doing our full jobs in service to God and service to that creator who reminds us that like everything is interconnected. And so is justice. When you do your emphasis of justice work, it causes a ripple effect to other justice movements, whether you're not seeing it for what it is in the moment or whether you're not seeing the direct impact, doesn't actually mean that you're not making a difference. It just means that you have a strong suit and you're showing solidarity to other movements for justice.
Yeah, and I know we'll probably talk about some movements and some things in the next couple of questions there, but you know, I feel like you what's in you has been planted in you from birth and from your family and then from your faith. But sometimes there are other catalysts that get us started down the path that we, or maybe not a catalyst, but something that actually shows us, oh, this is what I believe, but this is what I need to be doing with what I believe. And I had read somewhere in that you were influenced by the unfortunate tragedy that had happened in 2012 at Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and that it's inspired you or propelled you to your journey to being an activist. Could you tell us about that and the significance of why it inspired you so much?
Yeah, so the attack at the Oak Creek, Wisconsin Gurdwara became a really big calling for me because it actually helped me reshape or reframe my understanding of what it means to do the work of peace building. For those of you that don't know, the Oak Creek, Wisconsin shooting was when a white supremacist man thought he was walking into a Muslim mosque, went into services for the Sikh community, and basically started shooting at the congregation. This is a part of a very real tragedy that is happening all too often. We just saw another one yesterday in San Jose. And it made me, it actually struck fear in me that, oh my gosh, my community was attacked. What am I going to do for my community? And I kind of thought, oh my God, I've been looking at this so wrong. It's not just about what I'm doing for my own community. These kinds of injustices have been happening to other people for ages. It wasn't that I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't making the connection of how I show up for other communities as well. And I was reading through, scriptures. I was reading through a lot of, stuff that's very close to me and my practices. And there are two descriptions of God in the Sikh faith that I think really gave me a 180 in my approach to doing justice work. And they're the descriptions of Nirbhau and Nirvair, that God is the one without hate and without fear towards creation.
Mm.
And if God does not have fear or hatred towards creation, who am I to have fear or hatred towards creation? Rather than approaching things with the audacity of white supremacy, I want to be able to approach it with the courage and the revolutionary love necessary to make sure that I'm fighting for others at all times, at all costs. So over time, it's informed the last 8-9 years of the work that I've been doing, because again and again, we see that communities are, scared. Communities feel marginalized, and communities are dividing amongst themselves because of something like white supremacy, because of something like racism. And it's very easy to divide and conquer, knowing that you enemize those who are actually supposed to be your closest allies or your closest accomplices. And in the grand scheme of things, it reminds me that I need to keep showing up. I need to keep learning. I need to unlearn things that I might have learned before in terms of my biases. And I need to keep working towards the ability for mutual abundance to take place, that we all can prosper in a common space like the United States.
Oh man, that it's unfortunate that tragedy. It's unfortunate. It seems like we only learn from violence, and a little bit of my theology or how I think about things in a perspective. I've always, and I shouldn't say always, in later my life, the idea of Jesus having to, in the Christian faith tradition, having to be murdered, having to be for things to get right, and there's something about that, the idea of violence having to happen in order for good to come out. You would think we would get past that at some point, that violence is the way that this is gonna do that. Right. It's almost hypocrisy if you from the Christian faith to say, if Jesus paid it all, why are you trying to make somebody else pay again? And I tied it into the fact that you actually, the Wisconsin thing was actually, like I say, mistaken identity. It was still in hate, but right. It actually taught people, unfortunately, that there was a difference between Muslim and Sikh individuals. Like, people didn't know that. That's the crazy thing that came out of that,
And that was actually a very important catalyst too, because when the news was talking about, well, who are the Sikhs, as a response to a shooting that happened to a community, and then the narrative in a lot of media spaces was, oh, Sikhs are not Muslims. And I'm like, that's not education. You're changing a target. You're making it seem as though it's justifiable to attack the Muslim community,
right?
Which is like, that's totally not how this works.
No.
And it also makes us, really think about the realities of what happens when we focus on rehabilitative and restorative justice in the ways that need to be done, and we don't think about preventative justice that requires us to be activists, that requires us to be educators, that requires us to be artists, and all of those things that stop the things from happening in the first place, or stops the cycle of injustice in its tracks. And I think we need to have an approach to making sure that the right people show up for the right ways of doing justice before it can prevent something from taking place.
Yeah, that's very insightful and very, from your mouth to everybody's ears, from that, to everybody. I hope everybody takes that in. So we're trying to learn, and we're trying to take on the big task of, trying to teach America what America can learn, and we mean all of America. Of course, the world should learn this, but what can Americans learn about religious diversity from Asian Americans?
I think America needs to learn that the Asian American experience is not a monolith. It is just as complicated and nuanced and confusing as every other community. This is coming from me, one person who has two different faith traditions. So if I'm that complicated as an individual, you can only imagine how complicated it might be for other people from South Asia, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Nepalis, Sri Lankans, and then extending it out to, folks who are practicing Abrahamic traditions, Eastern traditions, spirituality, who might be atheist and agnostic, who might be having indigenous practices, and then who might have an intersection of a few or all of those things. How is simplifying or generalizing the experience of Asian Americans helpful for anyone when we have to be able to go out of our way to be able to learn about their uniqueness as well. And I think at the same time, we also have to remember that the Asian American experience also is struggling with the same questions that everyone in the United States is facing, of addressing things like the pandemic, of addressing things like systemic racism, that we continue to, teeter on when it comes to trying to see what side we want to choose, because it's not just about choosing what's right, it's about your safety and sensibility and your stability that come at risk when trying to make those decisions. And it's a very intergenerational separation of perspectives. Someone who's a millennial like myself might be thinking very differently than someone that might be someone who have traveled to the United States in the 20th century, or as recently as yesterday, who is still trying to understand what the American experience is. And it's going to just be as complicated as anything else that we do. So I want to remind people that, we are equal contributors to the American experience, but we are not the only ones to benefit or suffer from the consequences of the American experience. And so we as Asian Americans need to, open the blinds and say, oh my gosh, we're sharing a lot of experiences here with others. And rather than making them our enemies, they should actually be the closest folks that we work with all the time.
That's beautiful. You struck a chord with me when you started talking about being just like, right, it's going through the same things that this community is going. And I wonder why we can't realize that. We had the unfortunate tragedy at the synagogue shooting, and we just talk about, in the last 10 years, we had the Sikh community shooting. Of course, we had Mother Emanuel in Charleston, South Carolina. And, even more than that, arson of houses of worship, people shooting in Atlanta because of the idea of, certain theology that said this community is making me sin, all of that. What do you believe? And this is a big question, Tahil. And maybe not even that you have to answer, but just to put it out there, what is it going to take for all of us to realize we're just like the picture behind you? We're all in this together. If that branch is, I see it as a tree behind you. If there's something that's on this branch over here and it breaks this branch, then that means that could also break that branch over there. Why wouldn't we be concerned with each other if we see these things happening to each other's communities?
Well, actually, I think the tree behind me is a really good example, because you might see the different symbols here and there, and we only care about those leaves, forgetting that we all actually share roots and an actual, system like a tree that needs water, that needs sunlight, that needs all of the things that nourish every single thing that's attached to this tree. If we're not willing to acknowledge the nourishment, the knowledge, the solidarity, the values and the compassion necessary to be able to save the tree, the leaves are going to fall, whether we like it or not. And we don't actually acknowledge the fact that this is a part of, I think, an unfortunate process of creating an oppression Olympics, which is actually helping to people create apathy towards other communities. That if you don't care about the suffering of my community, I will not care about the suffering of anyone else. And that is so destructive and detrimental to the process of achieving justice that we now can't even barely achieve accountability. And if we can't achieve accountability, to hell with justice and peace, we're not even going to get anywhere close. So we have to hold ourselves accountable, our own communities accountable, and other communities accountable. It's a shared process and experience. No one is supposed to benefit more or less from it. We're all supposed to be abundant in the ability to thrive together.
Beautiful. Well, it's funny, you put that tree behind you and it just worked for us.
Yeah. I've been using this thing for months, and finally I get to use it as a literal example.
Yeah, And for people that are watching, me and Tahil have had conversations like this before. Dr. Sabrina Dent connected us as she does for so many, as she does for so many people. And even yesterday we connected on our personal Facebook page to share a little bit of a story with you guys. Yesterday, I actually posted something about. I think he is actually Reverend Vernon Jones, that's running for governor of Georgia. And Mr. Jones decided to post something in front of Ebenezer Baptist Church about he wished more people acknowledge the death of Jesus Christ as much as they do the death of George Floyd. Sometimes I try not to react to things, but I could not react to that. One, just and I put it in my post. I just think there's a level of ignorance that comes from that post. There's a level of Christian nationalism that comes from that post. It kind of ties back into the story, the conversation we had last week with Dr. Joshi, when she was saying white Christian privilege, and she's like, "Well, Charles, as a Christian, it doesn't matter if you're white. There's a Christian privilege to that, and to even live with the idea that why even bring those two things together? And if you want people to be more Christians, it's okay to say you love your faith and you want people to recognize Christianity, but why do you have to take away from what happened to George Floyd and the movement that it was pushing forward? And on top of that, to say, for me, if you recognize Jesus, you would see that George Floyd and Jesus have a lot in common. Both people of color, both murdered by the state, in the power structures that be. And so if you really knew Jesus, I think you would make that distinction. And I try to borderline with that sometimes, because I don't want to be like, I know my Jesus and my God. But there's an idea that, if people would just believe in my God or believe like me, then none of this would happen. And I know you shared some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, it's as someone who's had to pay attention to, I think, the stringent nature of what's happening to Christian theology. It's very interesting to see a post from Reverend Vernon, who is running for governor of Georgia, if I remember correctly, to acknowledge that people are not looking at George Floyd and Jesus the same way. Which if you're Christian and you don't see Jesus, like you're not really conversing with your own flock, I feel like. And it would be interesting to see him talk to, Senator Reverend Warnock, and to be able to talk to Dr. King, and to be able to talk to many figures past and present, to actually realize you are only focusing on the divinity of Jesus and his ability to save the world, but you're not recognizing the flesh and blood of Jesus, who sacrificed, who was not meant to be sacrificed, and who died for your sins in George Floyd. How can you not see that? How can you not see the unjust death of someone as the death of the very Savior that you pray to on a daily basis? That kind of audacity and that kind of theology of convenience is something I'm never going to understand. But by God's grace, we will have to keep figuring this out, because we are entering more crises than ever before. And if we choose this whataboutism stance, even with God himself, we're in a really tough spot.
And it takes the responsibility off of us.
Yeah.
That's what makes me upset about it, because
Right.
Many of the same people that claim that faith tradition don't even acknowledge what happened to George Floyd. And so it also is upsetting just because it doesn't take into account the religious freedom that we were supposed to have here in America. Just to think, oh no, if everybody thought about God like me, or thought about my God, or accepted my God, then none of this stuff would happen. And that's just against religious freedom.
One thing I wanted to add to that actually was last summer, I actually got to participate in a Buddhist for Black Lives March that took place in downtown Los Angeles. It was a silent march, which was very different from the sensory overload that comes with a lot of the demonstrations to call for justice. We marched quietly, holding prayer beads and meditating and praying, walking through blocks of downtown Los Angeles. People did not know what to do with us because we were quietly marching. And then for the first time, I had seen an altar for all of the Black lives that were killed by the state. And it was the first time that I've not only felt so connected to all of these people that I've never met in my life, but I actually got to mourn them as an activist, which I had never gotten to do. There was an altar where they were actually doing traditional funeral ceremonies for the Buddhist traditions. And we got to actually go prostrate and pray for their souls and stuff like that. That made me feel more connected to both the Black community and to different faith traditions at the same time. And that was the America that I was looking for this whole time. And I got to see it because of a chance that I got to hear that something like this was happening.
Man, it's two places I want to go there before we answer the last question. It's amazing that we have people fighting to not have the true about America come out because they think, oh, people will hate America if you tell the truth about America, fighting against critical race theory and all of those things. But you and I, in your story, saying, hey, you by connecting with this tragedy and connecting with other people, it made you feel like this is what you want America to be. So you didn't hate America from it. You want America to be better. And the same with me. I had that experience at the children's hospital because everybody at the children's hospital wanted the same thing. They didn't care what religion you were. We want our child to survive. So whatever you need to feel comfort in that, we're going to try to help that. And that's how I always tell people I want America to be. I wish America was like the children's hospital where everybody just cared about everybody. So to me, that debunks the notion of, hey, if you teach the realities of what has happened here and our the good, the bad, and the ugly, that people are just going to want to, destroy the country. No, we want to make it better, and we realize you can't heal something without actually going to the root or the cause of it, and from that. And so, like the tree, like the tree. And so, with that, I want to ask you this final question: what guidance or encouragement would you give to millennials who want to fight for faith freedom, and how can they get involved and involved as an activist?
I would share several things, and I think this would go for millennials and Gen Z, quite frankly, because I have a very deep-seated hatred, not towards people, but towards like ideologies that can be very toxic. And when you teach young people that they're not leaders until they pass certain goalposts, you're actually limiting their opportunities to start changing the world now. So first, you are a leader. You're already doing the work of leadership. You just have to remember that you don't have to be on the front lines to do leadership work. A lot of people do it behind the scenes. A lot of people do it as community organizers and artists and educators, as politicians, and so much more. You're ready for it now. You need to just find the right people to be able to uplift you in the ways to know how prepared that you are. Second, be ready to learn. This is all about learning right now, especially to those people who are either non-Black people of color or who are white. You have to really learn and unlearn a lot of things at the same time. Be prepared for that. Be prepared for the unease that goes with that. Be prepared to, think about the ways that you need to really reshape the involvement that you have in certain communities. Three, do not limit your activism to social media. Social media is a very toxic platform, and it is very hard to maneuver through those spaces. So I would invite you to think about how to be a better moderator or facilitator if you're going to be genuine about that, not just putting a post and saying Black Lives Matter and you're done for the day. And four, tap into what's happening locally. There are a lot of national situations that are happening. There are a lot of cities that have to reevaluate and reconsider what it means to have accountability, less militarized police forces, less militarized societies in general. And it requires you to start from the city you're in. You don't have to go to Ferguson. You don't have to go to Charleston. You don't have to go to DC. Start in the city that you're in to start doing the reforms, because it's the local work that matters the most at the end of the day. You have to sit with budgets, committees, city council, police forces, commissions in your city to see reforms. And that will be the bigger reflection of the ripple effect that we need for change and reform.
Man, we need to get you on a national campaign just to talk to the people in that way. Man, way to break that thing down for us, man. I'm encouraged myself just by hearing you, and you lit another fire in me to do more. And there's always more we can do. And man, that was beautiful about the age. It doesn't matter. Don't let anybody tell you when. And I guess on the other end, don't let anybody tell you that you're too old to do that, or too seasoned to do that. Like if there's something that's in your heart that you want to help, especially Faith Freedom for All, what we do at the BJC, but in any light to just help all of creation, go out and do that. Tahil, thank you so much for joining me today. And, we're so thankful for our AAPI community. The AAPI community makes America better, and all of us, together make America a better place. I want to take the time to make sure that everybody that's on here knows that next month we'll be doing a BJC event, Fierce Freedom. Reverend Jackie Lewis is going to be our speaker. That's going to be June 18th. I know it's going to be dropped down there in the chat or the part of that. Hope you join us. Go ahead and register for that now. If you've missed any of the part of this series, our Voices of Asian American Faith Freedom, please go back and look at the last 2 weeks and combine it with what Tahil has told us today. I think it's a great series. And then back in February, we did the Voices of Black Faith Freedom. Check that out. And we're going to continue to do these things throughout this year at BJC, and not just this year. We realize that these conversations need to continue to happen. And if you want to join in helping with the conversation, if you heard something today that has inspired you, reach out to us at BJC and get involved in that way. And Tahil, is there anything that they can get involved with your organization? Anything you want to plug to?
For those of you that don't know, I work for the largest grassroots interfaith organization called the United Religions Initiative. And as the regional coordinator for North America, we're focusing on a special series called Interconnected Justice that invites local communities and local individuals of faith to talk about their work on specific issues like racial justice. We have that conversation coming up on June 8th. So if you're interested in checking that out, type bit.ly/URI justice, and you can sign up to be able to participate there. And if you're looking to communicate with me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at InterfaithMan, or you can find me on Facebook by searching my name.
I like that. How did you get at Interfaith Man?
I just typed it in. No one used it, so it's mine.
Good stuff. Well, thank everybody again for joining us, and Tahil, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you to the BJC.